for the first EVIN 2022 Keynote. And to present this, we'd like to welcome Mr. Gaurav Gupta, Chief Commercial Officer, MG Motor India. An alumnus of St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, Mr. Gupta oversees the complete go-to-marketing strategy for the brand in India. He has also headed overall business management, brand building and marketing, channel development and performance improvement functions for various automotive companies in India, Vietnam, Indonesia and the Middle East, Singapore and China. More recently, he has been instrumental in MG's new age transformation and their highly successful launches, including MG Hector, India's first internet car, ZS EV, and the first pure electric internet SUV, and MG Gloucester, India's first autonomous Level 1 premium SUV. So over to you, Mr. Gupta, please welcome.
You know, I would only say that after you have that panel today, this keynote speaking point is not much required, because I think whatever was required to debate, discuss and learn, I think the fellow panelists have already mentioned that. But nevertheless, thank you very much, and I must thank Anuj, you and your team, because I must say that after 2 years of void, you know, getting back to be in person and meeting all our fellow industry people as well as others is really a very, very good change. And so I want to thank all of you for taking the step, and to all the members who are over here, because at some point in time, we get into the comfort of a digital screen. And then when you have to start planning for travel for 45 minutes and going to a meeting and coming back, believe me, you do have sometimes second thoughts. Do I need to travel? Can I make it online and become there? But the fun part is to meet everyone together. So thank you guys very much. Now I'm holding you all between this session and lunch. So I'll try and keep it a little interesting, and hopefully, you know, all of us will learn as we evolve. So I've just got a few charts to showcase here, because I thought from a speech perspective, data points are good, but I think, you know, pictorial support helps in overall engagement as well. So, you know, I want to just begin by first talking about the topic today. We've got Innovators Network. And when you bring that topic, it's important to understand, you know, why am I here? Frankly, we heard Vinkesh talk about MG earlier in the panel. We really believe that innovation being one of the core brand pillars of MG is driving us, right? We've got 4 brand pillars, which is innovation, diversity, customer experience, as well as community service. But under innovation, the products that we bring to the market, and I won't talk much about MG today, but the products that we bring to the market revolve around these 4 areas, which is connected, autonomous, shared and electric. And again, all these will have a very strong interplay with each other. So being the internet car, for example, the Hector, or the autonomous car, which is the Gloucester and now the Aster, or the electric, which is the ZS EV. And even on the shared, you know, we worked with Mr. Vij and the team with Miles to work out subscription packages for customers. So this, I think, will be the bedrock of the future of the automotive industry. And within each of these pillars, you'll have a lot of opportunity coming across, and we'll talk about that briefly as well. So this is one chart which I think will resonate with all of us. You know, I put it very simply. You know, what's undergoing a change, and we heard you know, we heard Nishant, we heard everyone talk about this. You know, very simply put, that we call it car as a platform. You know, Mr. Vij talked about IoT, he talked about analytics, data sharing, etc. So we termed it as car as a platform where software is the differentiator. So it's a very important, you know, I would say the entire growth perspective. And the second is the entire EV segment, which we are seeing on the rise. So from an innovator's perspective, these are the 2 broad areas where we see a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs, for startups, for existing companies to kind of change their course also, or adapt their course to become relevant and stay in the overall market for long as well. So begin with, this is how we see the EV business. And why do I say I want to spend some time on this chart? You know, there's a lot of surround that has happened here. So when at MG, we were looking at the electric vehicle in 2017, and I was so happy to hear Mr. Srivastav talk about it, that 2017 they were working on the electric vehicle initiative. And then Anuj talked about the MOVE Summit in 2000, and I think it was 18, when he was there with the Prime Minister. You know, at that time when we were working for our second car to be a pure electric, there were many, many skeptics, even within our own company also, that why an EV, and why would you bring it into a country which had less than 2,000 cars per annum, right? But there was a reason that the whole world was moving towards EV. And now we see that thanks to all the initiatives, whether it is SIAM, government, all the stakeholders put together, you see the surround sound, right? You've got policies on PLI, you've got policies on manufacturing, then you've got it for ACC, Advanced Cell Chemistry. You've got the state governments looking at RTO charges being waived off. You've got special electric meter at home from a charging perspective, right? And then you've got a lot of component development taking place. Most importantly, all of us are meeting face to face to discuss it, right? So nowadays you go to any evening, post-COVID era, the discussion always revolves around, yeah, next gaadi leni hai, EV leni hai, which was not there 3 years ago, right? So the moment the share of mind becomes share of conversation, you are seeing the impact of it. And what you see on the chart here is where is EV today and where we see EVs growing in the next 5 to 7 years. Our take is we are betting on the 30-30 vision, which means that India auto industry could get up to 30% of an EV contribution of an overall industry of about 5.2 or 5.3 million. And then if you're looking at the per annum volume and you look at the cumulative car park of EVs, you have a huge opportunity to be able to build any business, be it in the subscription business, be it in software applications, IoT, dealership transformation. Vinkesh, I'll talk about the perspective of manpower also, as well as how dealer model will also undergo a change little bit, right? But the dealer will always remain a key partner of the OEM and the consumer link always, right? So everyone will have a role to play in this huge industry. And you see the growth of the ICE engine, right? It is not going away. It will still be a dominant player in India. So when we talk about EVs, many people say, "Ab aage kya hoga," right? But dominant factor will remain 60-70% of the per annum volume will continue to be ICE, unless of course things rapidly change in the last 3-4 years of the decade, then you could have different percentages. But if you see the current growth rate and the plans of the existing players, the PLI to take shape in investments, production, likewise, we are looking at this as a kind of a reference chart for ourselves. So this is from a volume perspective, right? Because ultimately, it's all about, size, structure, and making sure everybody shares the entire growth. And then it's important that you have an ecosystem to work on it. This is the chart I want to just refer to, not so much about MG per se, but when we were bringing in the electric vehicle in 2019 December, we realized that we cannot do it ourselves. And that is why, Anuj, the topic is so important about Innovators Network, because it's all about the ecosystem. So we were looking at purely from a customer that, why would a Ranojoy look at an electric vehicle for himself? So we looked at that, okay, one, there is a car. Second, what is required from a charging perspective? Charging would be at home, charging would be at outside the home, fast charging when he's on the commute. Then we looked at what kind of connectivity is required, because these cars, we know that they will be more advanced. What kind of components will be required for this car? So what kind of partnership we need, whether it's Infinium, whether it is the other partners for components like electric motors and battery and BMS and likewise. Also, we talked about partnership for the future, for recycling. What are the partners who can play a role? Because ultimately, EV is about sustainability, right? And taking care of environment. So how do you look at the entire loop cycle to be closed? It would come at some point in time, but we wanted to show that, be sure ourselves it can happen in India. And I'm happy to share, and I'll talk about that later on, that we actually have recycled a battery in India. We've recycled an entire electric vehicle lithium-ion battery, the first in the country, and very close to where we are. It was done by a company called Etero, which they have a plant in Roorkee. And now that is the entire, so loop cycle was very important, right? The second part, of course, is the second life of the battery and likewise. So a lot of work is required for the ecosystem. So this was our ecosystem that we were developing before we brought in the car, because we cannot do it ourselves. We take it as a startup. And likewise, the entire industry has a startup. This is an eye chart. Don't go through this, because there are multiple stakeholders, and that's why I made it simple to look at this one. If you look at what are the dots of the EV ecosystem, there are multiple players. If you just go through all of them and you connect them, that is where the consumer starts to benefit, and everybody will have a role to play in this. We talk about innovation in the product and service. Now, product also implies the component manufacturing partners. It also implies who will be the service partners. Product is not just an OEM game plan. Because frankly, like we heard from Mr. Katti also, a lot of the development happens in institutes like IITs. They work with top global and top leading suppliers and disruptive suppliers. They bring it to the OEM. We then look at integrating it, testing it, and there you have the magic of bringing it to the market. So there are a lot of stakeholders. What you see is the OEM in the front, but behind that, the strength lies of the entire system which supports and develops new technologies, right? We talk of charging infrastructure, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Third-party apps and startups. I think EV's ecosystem, and that's why innovators network becomes important, because there's only so much OEMs can do, but the startups in this stage can do wonders. And I must say that we've been working in the last 3 years. We have not finished 3 years. Our first car was in July 2019. In less than 3 years, we have been associated, engaged with about more than 1,000 startups in various areas. We've got our own developer program and grant, and close to almost 600 startups. We've got proof of concept projects, and as we speak, we are working with them in various areas of whether it is blockchain, AI, and these are very young startups. And believe me, their project, their execution time from proof of concept to actually getting a real testing and then getting them a purchase order can be as short. I'll give you an example. A company called blockchain-based company, right? We're working with Dr. Praful Chandra here. And with them, we saw their concept in March 2021. And in August, we brought that concept into our car from a digital car passport, which means that Anuj talked about training passport. So now we have vaccine passport, you have geographical country passport, but this company, we worked with them, CoinEarth is the name. With them we worked, and now you have a digital car passport in the cloud, which is untamperable. And just imagine that you have your entire car data and you can share it with insurance companies, possibly, and using a sandbags product, and they may be giving you some advantages. You're looking at a resale value because you have everything on a blockchain on the cloud. So all this becomes important, and this was not there 1 year ago, but this is all a young startup coming out of Bangalore in India, right? We worked with a company called Park Plus recently. I'm not trying to promote them here, but all these apps are very important because that is the innovators network. You have to have the faith in giving these young startups a chance. Otherwise, we will not be able to disrupt the change, disrupt and bring the change, right? Battery life cycle management, and Mr. Rao talked about it also, and I'll bring that also in my topic today. Connected solutions, I've already mentioned. Battery as a service, to me, this is an entire opportunity which is out there waiting for someone to really take on this activity. It will be a huge game changer because you are looking at, there was talk about acquisition cost of a car is expensive because the battery right now, you could say ballpark is about 40 to 50% of the car value. And the deposits, Nishant, to your point, actually they are linked across the world. The largest reserves of lithium actually are in places in South America like Chile, Argentina, Bolivia. So that is where the deposits are lying. Cobalt is in Congo, for example, right? So they're spread in various different countries. But the point is that battery as a service and battery or asset management can be a huge game changer in bringing down the cost of acquiring an EV, because then you are able to separate the EV and the car and the battery, or the shell and the battery per se. And this company can then work on this, and I'll briefly cover that. Insurance and skill development, we'll talk about it. And frankly, there is, I would say more is less. Right now, we need to do much, much more in this area, more actively, and encourage more people to jump onto this bandwagon. In fact, frankly, I say that even, people like us who are now on the wrong side of the century, we all have to understand how do we remain relevant? how do we also remain ourselves, to reskill ourselves, to be able to talk the language, understand the language, and give some directions as well in the operations, right? And obviously content providers. So moving forward, on the charging infrastructure, first and foremost, most EVs will come with an onboard charger. That is a given in most cases. So that kind of rest assured that that's like a mobile which comes with a charger itself, right? And you charge it at home, literally. Usually a 15 ampere or 16 ampere socket should be able to charge your car. It might take longer depending on the battery size. So you have to change a habit formation. The way we all charge our mobiles at home, whether at night time, and then you have an all-day battery basically. So you're able to manage with that. So if your car is able to provide to you, by any standards, 200 plus kilometer range, you are comfortable for a day battery for a city. And then if you're looking at some of the cars, like I would say in this case, apna pitch kar deta hu, like a ZS EV, for example, which has a 461 kilometers of range, you are better equipped to even do long distance drives, because you will be able to charge it periodically and you have the coverage there. The third is the point about having, your home chargers now. So 15 ampere socket is one, but you also install a 7.5 kilowatt AC fast charger at home wherever you have the capability of putting in a connection, because that will support you. It will charge your car faster, right? And then you're looking at DC fast chargers, which are there in various locations, and I can tell you that the work that is happening in the country is really at a rapid pace. There are private sector players, there are government sector players, oil companies who are looking at transforming and adding on DC fast chargers across on the highways, intercity, on a very rapid pace. We are working with many of them also, and I will not name them right now. But you need these mostly beyond the city, because within the city, a 200 kilometer range, 300 kilometer range is good enough for you. You can easily go home and top up your battery, like you do on your mobile. We don't go looking around everywhere for topping up our battery on the mobile phone. But beyond that, if you're driving, then you're looking at intercity drive. So that's the location where a lot of action is happening right now. And believe you me, I think in 2 years or 3 years' time, you'll be seeing probably at every tank, like even the minister has also mentioned about the target for the companies to put up the chargers. And then you're looking at on the go. Many charging, like you have the roadside assistance. When people call up today, petrol or diesel khatam ho gaya, you've got similar tie-ups. In fact, we have tied up with 2 partners as well, where they have a vehicle-to-vehicle, or you can say the vehicle comes up to your location, tops up 30 odd kilometers. In that much time, you can reach, with that range, you can reach the nearby area to top up your battery also, right? And like Mr. Vij mentioned, frankly, the systems in the car today tell you that how much of a range is left and what is the nearest charging point for your car. And the app is also built inside where you can book your slot and get going. So the 2 hours charging, frankly, I would say depends on what kind of charging system the vehicle has. Can it undertake a fast charge or not? Because usually vehicles which are in fleet operations, they will do a quick top-up charge and keep the vehicle running. That's the advantage of having the EV. You don't have to line up for CNG queues for long time, for example, which is historic now, frankly. It will have a role to play, but things will move forward, right? And then we're looking at how do you give people more confidence. We talked about the load in people's homes. That is why the sixth, the topic that you will see on the right side is the community chargers. So we've done some experiment in Gurgaon and we're taking it pan-India. We're saying we'll put 1,000 chargers in residential colonies. So if any of you in your respective colony are interested, please reach out to me or my team. We'll be more than happy to work and install an AC fast charger at your residential condominium or a society. Because to us, that is where the trigger will start to happen. It's a catalyst, because you may not have the entire load available, fair enough. But like you said, there'll be happy hours also. Discoms will come and say, charge your electric vehicle between 4 and 6, and you'll have differential rates, right? You're looking at load balancing at the back end. The bars can be always looking at how do you manage the load factor. So see, the point is, for every situation of a problem, you will have solutions coming up. I only say that we have to just be ready for a change. Just imagine, you talked about horse carriages getting into cars. Just imagine what would have happened at that point in time. We talked about certain fuels not having the same life cycle as other fuels in the country. What happens? People have moved on. Things have again adapted. So you will have systems to modify and change and support this entire movement. But the movement is here to stay. And even from electric vehicles, if you go to the next range, you will again have the entire transitioning to work. And frankly, the rate at which the change is happening now is much faster. Today, 2021, worldwide, electric vehicles were almost as close as 9% of the overall industry, worldwide, which was less than 2% a few years ago. So the growth rate is phenomenal, and we've seen the data in developed countries and also in countries like India also. You saw the graph, you will see the momentum building up. But here, like Mr. Witt said, you need more options. You need more products. We need our fellow OEM companies to bring in faster the products, because frankly, the choice to the consumer becomes better. You see more options. And that's when you get the scale coming in to drive the entire change. This, of course, is more from a technical perspective. But why I wanted to show this chart is because you talked about Innovators Network. So, we had the gentleman from IIT, I forget his name, who was sitting here. So we are also working with IIT Delhi, in fact, Professor Panigrai. These are various options where startups can play a role. Last mile charging, that means how do you install a charger in someone's house? Can you leave it to a local electrician? Answer is no. The reason for that is you should be better qualified to know exactly how is the earthing to be conducted, what is the fitment, and this is where a lot of young startups can start playing a role. In fact, we have partnered with a startup called eCharge Bay for just this aspect. Pan-India, their job is that any customer who's buying an electric vehicle for an MG, his team goes, inspects the location, gets the wiring and all conducted, video camera, record the whole thing, so you ensure quality is there. Just imagine there's opportunity over here. So charging management system, CMS, we talked about the Zomatos and Swiggis of the world. Similarly, you'll have many more companies, many startups are coming in also. In fact, we supported 1 or 2 startups earlier, where you're looking at sharing the information about chargers available for going over there and charging your vehicle. So there's a lot of opportunity here. In the entire ecosystem is, of course, big, but even here, how do you install the charger? What kind of app do you have? How do you integrate the various companies who are putting in their chargers and give it to the customer? So a lot of opportunities over here for the startups to come in and play a role over here. Sustainable battery lifecycle management. I talked about battery recycling. So we teamed up with 3 companies. Umicore is Europe's largest company. Tessam is a US-based, but also they have a plant in Chennai. But Etero is homegrown, Roorkee, like I mentioned. And frankly, we were also pretty much surprised and amazed at the way it was managed, because phone batteries, they do cycle. But battery electric vehicle, lithium-ion, for them to manage for us was really commendable. And I will ask you all that please look at it, that how they have conducted this entire battery management, battery recycling, really, really world-class. And that, again, that tells you that... Sorry? Yes. Yeah, Neeraj Gupta is the guy. So we've been working with them, and that tells you that when we launched the car, people were saying, what will happen to the recycling of the battery? You will corrupt the environment. But there you have a recycling solution, homegrown solution. So the more data sharing which happens, and you bring up the problem, you surface it, there will be people who will come and solve it for you. That's very important. And then you have second life solutions. So we've been working, and people will work with batteries. We talked about battery to the grid, Anuj. But at the same time, there are already projects going on in India where battery, after it has served its purpose in the car, and frankly, the life goes on for almost like 2,000 or 3,000 ampere cycles as well, which is a long life per se, which means you can do multiple charging of the vehicle for many years of the battery. And after that also, the attenuation that comes down, the battery is still serviceable. So if the range, let's say, is 500 kilometers, hypothetically, after a few years or 2 years, it will come down to maybe 480, 470, it comes down. Even after 5 years, if it's at 400, it's good enough. After 8 years, if it is 300, it's good enough, because you are still able to do your daily mobility activities, right? But in case you are looking, now you connect the dots. Suppose I do battery as a service. where I say, okay, now I will swap your battery for a new battery technology, give me back your old battery. What happens to that battery? Either you recycle it, or that battery can go and support second life usage, which is mobile towers, they need constant power. We are experimenting in some rural areas where where villages can be powered by electric battery also. We heard about how Puerto Rico many years ago was entirely charged up by batteries of automakers. Similarly, you will also understand this is possible already. So if you connect the dots about battery asset management, second life battery management, you have an entire solution over there. And how many players are there? Hardly any. So from an innovators network, I would only ask and urge that more and more startups can join this, or existing companies can expand their function to look at this opportunity. Financing and insurance, right? So many people ask us, how is the insurance on this car? How do you manage on this? There has to be some change, obviously, because these cars have less moving pieces. Typically, the operating cost of a ZS electric vehicle, for example, is just about 1 rupee per kilometer, compared to a multiple of 6 or 7 for an ICE engine vehicle. And less moving pieces means less damages, right? Less damages, less breakage, less wear and tear, I would say, has its own impact on insurance. So that undergoes a change. Financing. So if you separate the battery from the car, and the company takes over battery as an asset management to say, I will give you battery rental is separate. Today I want a 40 kilowatt battery. After 3 years, I'll say, okay, you know what, my usage is less. I'll give up the 40. I either want a 60 or I want to take a 30 depending on my usage. That battery then goes on to a second life. But, so you are paying dual part, right? You are looking at your car, which is the shell, and you're looking at battery, which is a recyclable, which means you can keep upgrading it. And that will be also backed by a good resale value because it has got second life. So if you separate the two areas, and the government of India already initiated this as well, you actually have a very good proposal for acquiring an EV. Otherwise, right now we all say, gaadi mehengi hai, the battery makes it difficult. But more work needs to be done in this area. I talked about battery as a service, so I won't talk more about that. Skill development. Right, we've all mentioned, Minkesh also mentioned about skill development and likewise. So skill development is something which I think there has to be like an entire, if I can use the word tsunami to get this going. Because not only for ourselves, but whether it's vocational training and likewise. So what did we do? So we've teamed up with ASDC, and we are working with them to help educate and train people on both, on electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and IoT of vehicles, because you need the technicians out there. We talked about 20% people in the dealerships. So at least at MG, what we do is we train everybody on all the vehicles, because all our cars actually are connected cars, autonomous cars, electric cars. So that ratio is the reverse in our case. But besides that, every workshop typically will have a pool of 2 or 3 technology experts or tech advisors, not just normal tech experts, where this is something akin to what you could call as a whiz in the Apple store, where he understands the entire gamut and he is the on-the-floor guru per se, you can say, right? Second is that using technology now, you have a lot of live on-the-spot advice that can be provided to the team in the workshop, which means that you have a think tank or a trained pool over here, and they can do live video screening and they can advise in case of issues which can happen in the workshop. But more importantly, what we are also doing is a program called MG Nurture, which is now in its second stage, where we are picking up college students in their second year, third year in tier 2 towns and bringing them to MG in a very planned 6 months program to understand real work in the area of EVs and the area of autonomous, because they will at least eventually start understanding this technology. We are working with IIT Delhi, like I mentioned, both on autonomous and electric vehicle usage. With ACMA also, we have provided them a car to work and develop the technology and understand, and they can share this car and the entire details with component developers. So because the car, you will have 3 parts: the mechanical part, the propulsion will be the motors, and then you have the battery management system. So once you're giving your entire technology, your product for people to learn and play around with, you will have more and more growth coming up with new areas. So at least I would say we are doing our bit, and we would like more and more players to come and do their bit to help this entire area to move forward. I talked about startups. More is less here. So more and more players can really come and play. I just got a few of the images over here. But charging management system is an opportunity, right? Even getting into component manufacturing, because this is a very inviting, because this is the future. It's a sunrise sector. So many players can come in and work in this area. IoT-enabled solutions, like I talked about, car as a platform and software as a differentiator. Many offerings can come and play a role over here. Fleet operators, Mr. Vij talked about it, right? What will that model undergo a change? Will it be a point-to-point? You have some options in the developed markets. Will it be short-term rentals? Will it be membership programs? All of this will really emerge and become new opportunities based on EVs, based on connected solutions, and changing consumer needs also. And frankly, this is getting accelerated. Last 2 years has made even, I would say, my mother, who is 70 plus, also become a bit more tech savvy in setting up a Zoom call. So I can tell you that all of us are moving faster in the direction, and the faster we move and support it, it'll be more and more sustainable. Again, on the ecosystem, this is the last chart holding us between now and lunch. If you see, we talked about whether it is Geo, Pi. This is not an ad for our partners, but the important point is you need a network. You need, whether it's innovators network, you need your ecosystem network to operate. You cannot do yourself. So the faster we all learn and we adapt to it, it's important. This one is more from the software part in the car. Our vision is that the way, I bought my first car saying I want this chrome, I want leather steering wheel, I want this bumper protector as part of accessories. The generation today and in the future will buy cars on the applications inside the car and outside the car. So in-car and outside the car services, subscriptions, for example, right? So it becomes more like I always say it's 5G on 4 wheels, which means that your car is actually an extension of your home, your workspace, and because it's a seamless transition now. So that is where a lot of opportunity comes in for services and apps to come in. And that can be a huge opportunity for people to really, indulge in, offer, integrate, super apps, whatever you may call it. That becomes an area to play and take advantage of, right? I think that's going to be the end at my end. But I will say, Anuj, to you and to all our fellow panelists, thank you very much. It gets us a chance to meet, talk over lunch as well. But EVs definitely, when people were talking 3 years ago and 5 years ago when we were making this product program, that why, I think all of us are now convinced it is the current. It is the current, and we have to really, current as in both ways, and definitely we should drive it forward. So forums like this really help and bring people together. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. Gupta, and we would like to offer a small token of our appreciation. I would like to invite Mr. Anuj Guglani to come and present this, please.